She apparently infiltrated the complex looking for her lost brother, Chris Redfield, one of the surviving members of RPD's famous STARS teams.
There is a lingering sentiment Resident Evil Code Veronica was an unnecessary spin-off, that it wasn't canon due to it not being a numbered entry, and as it was, at least initially, released solely for the Sega Dreamcast, it wasn't put into the hands of enough players to garner a solid fanbase, leading to it being an often forgotten entry in Capcom's long-running survival horror series. It's not as if Code Veronica didn't sell, though. Its subsequent port to PlayStation 2, an enhanced version with additional story elements and alternative cutscenes titled Resident Evil Code Veronica X, brought the game to a much-needed wider audience. But Resident Evil Code Veronica was destined to be a castaway. Even Capcom's own treatment of the game is questionable. Fans and critics alike can't understand why Code Veronica hasn't received the remake treatment. After all, every entry up to Code Veronica has been remade. The original Resident Evil from 1996 was remade in 2002, with an HD remaster of the remake appearing in 2015. Resident Evil 2 received a critical acclaimed remake in 2019, with its numbered up followed by Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, granted a similar revamp in 2020. And lest we forget, Code Veronica was originally developed to be the true sequel to Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was the original spin-off, but various boardroom decisions meant it only got released on limited platforms initially. Resident Evil 2 and 3 got remakes, but the developers have completely skipped Resident Evil Code Veronica, and with it, a chance to revisit the icy isolation of desolate yet surprisingly grandiose Antarctic island locations. The game takes place 3 months after the events of Resident Evil 2 in December 1998. Claire Redfield, still on the hunt to find her missing brother after the cataclysmic events of Raccoon City, is captured in Paris during a daring raid on the Umbrella Corporation facility. Claire is then transported to and incarcerated on Rockford Island, a secretive prison complex operated by Umbrella location in a remote corner of the Southern Ocean. Shortly after a T-virus outbreak on the island, Claire is released and must forge an escape through the ensuing chaos. As Code Veronica is Resident Evil's first foray overseas from the USA, the environments displayed a uniquely distinct Gothic flavor. They're an expanse of gray and pointed arches and checkerboard hallways, especially inside the presiding family Ashford's private palatial residence, where the decor is more akin to European castles than Antarctic military facility. This locale specifically creates a singular creepy atmosphere which rivals the haunted house aesthetic established in the Spencer Mansion or Raccoon City Police Department. As Resident Evil Code Veronica was the first Resident Evil entry to move away from pre-rendered backgrounds to fully realized real-time 3D environments, there's an enhanced immersion to the title too. While series staple tank controls remain, Code Veronica's camera work is much more dynamic, with the real-time 3D environments allowing the camera to follow the action by panning and zooming as Claire navigates through her frozen, fog-strewn surroundings. Code Veronica sits in a unique position among prior title static camera work, and it's all the better for it, as graphically speaking, Code Veronica was the best in the series up to this point, with the fidelity of the in-game cutscenes in a notable high point. The Gothic inspiration moves beyond architecture, with Code Veronica exhibiting an operatic story driven by a crazed nobleman and the fate of his bloodline. Yes, the game's secondary antagonist, Alfred Ashford, is memorable not just for his dark demeanor, but in his character's befuddling split personality between his own and that of his twin sister Alexia, who was cryogenically frozen some 17 years prior. Alfred is up there amongst the most complex and memorable foes in any Resident Evil entry. Whiny, obsessive, and completely over the top, which obviously is par for the course with Resident Evil antagonists, but also with a meaningful character arc that continuously usurps expectations with every revelation. Speaking of usurping expectations, and fair warning, the next section is somewhat more spoiler-filled than this feature up till now, but the unexpected return of Resident Evil adversary Albert Wesker is very welcomed indeed. Augmented with superhuman powers and now working as a rogue renegade on the hunt for a sample of the powerful T. Veronica virus, Wesker personifies pure evil. His powers are outlandish, bordering on cartoonish for sure, but every time Wesker's on camera, his hate-filled presence is unnerving. Surely Wesker is amongst the most irredeemable antagonists in media, not just in Resident Evil.
What are you doing here?
I came for Alexia.
Who?
An organization hired me to capture her.
Wait. You attacked the island. And my sister!
His appearance in Code Veronica provides exceptional counterpoint to Chris Redfield, whom, another spoiler, appears on Rockford Island in search of his sister shortly after Claire's moved on the Antarctic research facility with new character Steve Burnside. In fact, it isn't too much of a spoiler seeing as Chris appears on Resident Evil Code Veronica's box art that he'd make an appearance in the game. What fans might not have been expecting is that the latter half of the game, players will be controlling Chris as he retreads Claire's steps through the Rockford Island prison complex, its military training facilities, and the Ashford Stately Palace. The enhanced Resident Evil Code Veronica X's extra details centered mostly on Albert Wesker, with the hand-to-hand combat encounter between Chris Redfield and Wesker after the final boss fight with Alexia Ashford being an awesome highlight. The only missteps, if there are any, include the new character Steve Burnside, who's far too boring to accompany the now battle-hardened Claire as they fight through hordes of zombies on their escape from Rockford Island. Perhaps the whole point of Steve's character is to appear especially feeble in order to enhance Claire's appearance as someone far stronger and more capable than the one that they meet in Resident Evil 2. This, alongside his notably unfit-for-purpose voice acting, relegates Steve to a tertiary character that must be endured rather than endeared. Another misstep, perhaps, is the continuing obtuseness and obfuscated puzzles and wayward save points. Yes, convoluted puzzles are a hallmark of Resident Evil, but Code Veronica's puzzles border on the nonsensical, with even longtime gamers having to whip out a guide on every playthrough. Make no mistake, Code Veronica is amongst the most challenging of Resident Evil games, and there are a handful of no-return checkpoints. Failure to save with ample resources before moving beyond a checkpoint could result in huge sections of the game needing replaying. This is perhaps a legacy of outdated game design, and one that Capcom would surely fix should Resident Evil Code Veronica ever be remade. Arguably, the truest sequel to Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil Code Veronica bears all the hallmarks of classic, quintessential Resident Evil, and whilst its notoriety has risen in recent years, it's a shame it's been largely forgotten. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.